Well, hello world. It is I, the Mystic Philosopher. And thanks again for tuning in to the right number. Today I would like to share with you another perspective on the George Zimmerman's not guilty verdict, or if you prefer, my perspective on the George Zimmerman's not guilty verdict. Now, the questions I would like to ask is this: why are so many people surprised or acting surprised and upset at the not guilty verdict for George Zimmerman? And why are some of us being so unfair in our critique and condemnation of the jurors and to George Zimmerman's legal defense team for just doing their job, which is to defend and free their clients as tactful, as meticulous, and vigorous as evidently they did. Now, based on the system, isn't that what or isn't that the way all defense lawyers or defense team are supposed to defend their clients? Vigorous, tactful, and to get their clients acquitted. Could it be that some of us have become so deceived by the system, so trusting and deceived by the system, by prejudice, and have become so prejudiced and biased, so biased in our minds that our own prejudices are now clouding our latent ability to think critically, and to judge and to, think critically, to reason rationally, and to make judgment based on the facts that are maybe sometimes right, facts that are right there before our eyes. Let's look at what George Zimmerman was charged with, or what he was charged for, according to the Sanford, Florida state laws. He was charged with second-degree murder, resulting from the killing of young Trayvon Martin. Now, if he was found guilty as charged, then the second-degree murder, from my understanding in Florida, would have earned him a possible life sentence in prison. Now, please note that I am not a lawyer, nor am I any legal expert. I am the Mystic Philosopher. I'm just an observer, a thinker, and like to see things from different angles. As I always said, my perspective, meaning from where I am looking at things, seeing things, and understanding things. So, based on what I have read and heard, and to the best of my knowledge and understanding, George Zimmerman was not charged with any other charge other than second-degree murder. Now, for example, he was not charged with a lesser charge such as manslaughter, which, if he was charged and convicted, Zimmerman could have got up to 30 years in prison. And even if he was charged with a much lesser charge, such as aggravated assault, and if he was found guilty, he could have served up to 5 years in prison, or at least a 5-year prison term. I understand that later on into the trial, or at some point into the trial, the Sanford, Florida state prosecutors may have realized that under the circumstances, they may have overcharged George Zimmerman, and that that his very able defense team was not going to let them get away with it. So as a result, they asked the judge to instruct the jury to consider the lesser charge or the lesser charges, such as manslaughter and aggravated assault. However, Zimmerman's attorney objected, and rightfully so. That's their job to do so, to defend their client to the best of their ability. Because whether you may like them, meaning like Zimmerman's attorneys and defense team, whether you may like them or not, they were competent and confident that they could win, and they devised their strategy and eventually claimed victory for their clients, or for their client, George Zimmerman. Now let us look at what we are told happened on that fateful night. Let us also remember that as disappointed as some of us are, or as disappointed as we may be with the not guilty verdict, the fact is that none of us were there to witness what actually happened. We are told by George's defense, or his defense lawyers or attorneys, that on that fateful night of February 26, 2012, George Zimmerman killed young Trayvon Martin in an act of self-defense and not an act of murder. On the other hand, the Sanford state prosecutors tell us that George killed young Trayvon Martin in an act of second-degree murder. Now, the question I would like to ask, or let us have a clear understanding of, is what is self-defense? Well, self-defense, and again, not being a lawyer, it is, as the word implies, I'm a person who likes to understand what words stand for and the meaning of words. Self-defense, as in my younger days as a martial artist, I know what self-defense is all about. It's defense of self. Self-defense, defend yourself, or defense of self, as the word implies. And it could also be interpreted, and in circumstances it could also mean, in certain situations, you must kill or be killed. Kill or be killed. So that's self-defense. Of course, in self-defense, not because you can kill, you should kill. So please don't misinterpret me. But I'm just giving you the situation. There are circumstances where, you either kill or be killed if you are in a war or whatever. But that's not the point here. I'm just defining self-defense. Now, the next question is, what is murder? Here's a quote from the online dictionary. I just don't like to conjure up my own thoughts, because English, again, is not my language. It's not my natural native earthly human tongue. It is the British language, a European language. I am from the African descent. English is not a language that is genetically coded in the Mystic Philosopher. So I'm using the slave masters, and now the slave masters' heirs and successors' language. So in order to try and convey, if you will, bring across my thoughts using another people's language, I have to try and understand the meanings of the words that I'm using in that language. So I'm always resorting to the dictionary. I know some of you may see it as otherwise, but of course I am a person that goes to the dictionary for each and every word that I don't quite understand. So, here's a quote from the online dictionary, one of the most convenient places to find the meanings of words right now, the internet. So, according to dictionary.com, the meaning of the word murder, and I quote, law, the killing of another human being under conditions specifically covered in law. In the United States or in the US, special statutory see, English is not my language, I can't even pronounce some of the words. Special statutory definitions include murder committed with malice aforethought, characterized by deliberation or premeditation, or occurring during the commission of another serious crime. As serious crime as robbery and arson. Now, first degree murder. So that is first degree murder. And murder by intent, but without deliberation and premeditation. That's second degree murder. Unquote. I humbly ask that you just Google this dictionary.com, Google the word murder, and follow along with me. First, understand the meaning of self-defense, understand the meaning of the word murder, and the categories of murder. First degree murder, what is categorized as first degree murder, what is categorized as second degree murder. Now, according to this definition of murder, I, the Mystic Philosopher, unlike many others, cannot and could not honestly and with a fear and a pure conscience to myself be true say that George Zimmerman got away with murder based on these definition here of the word, speaking in English. It's interesting. If I had thought about it, I would have also looked up the definition of murder straight from a law dictionary, like the Black's Law Dictionary. That just crossed my mind. I apologize. Should have done that too. So I could not say that he got away with murder, be it murder in the first degree or murder in the second degree. Again, as they are defined here on dictionary.com. And if any of you watch this video and you have another definition that maybe counter that definition on dictionary.com, or may shed more light on murder and why you think based on the definition of murder he got away with murder in the first or the second degree, I humbly ask that you refer me to that definition. I'm open for information. For to say that George Zimmerman got away with first degree murder, as some people are saying, or at the least as some people are implying, would mean that I, the Mystic Philosopher, honestly think that he possibly knew Trayvon Martin. He may have known him before. He knew Trayvon Martin and had ill will towards him, meaning George Zimmerman had ill will towards him, that he had an evil desire to kill him. Consequently, he thought for some time, a forethought, about killing Trayvon Martin. He deliberated on it. He pre-planned his action as to how he would execute his plan, and possibly how he would have gotten away with it. Or, on the other hand, that Trayvon, that he killed, George Zimmerman killed Trayvon while George Zimmerman was in the process of robbing him, Trayvon, or setting fire to Trayvon's property. Obviously, that was even difficult for the prosecutors. So they looked at option B, which is second degree murder. Again, please check the definition. I humbly ask you to do so. However, I too could not in good and honest conscience say that, or say without reasonable doubt, that George Zimmerman, honest and only intention that fateful night was to confront, murder, or kill Trayvon or any other person that matches Trayvon's description. I could not honestly say that. It is possible. It is possible. But how can I know that as a fact? Or how could the jury prove that without a reasonable doubt? And reasonable doubt, from my perspective, means that a people of reason, or a person of reason, have no room in this case left to doubt whether or not he is guilty or not guilty, or guilty or innocent. How could I prove what was, or what I think may have been in George Zimmerman's heart, in his mind, the night that he at the very least, admitted to shooting and killing Trayvon Martin, and then sentence him to life in prison? Under these circumstances, if to myself I must be true, then it would be a very difficult thing to say when all things are considered, and I have no reasonable doubt. Therefore, George Zimmerman should spend the rest of his life behind bars. So I wasn't there. I don't know what was in his heart. And to look at the case objectively and to be fair, so that I don't have to live with that guilt of doubt, or know that because I am biased or prejudiced, or because injustice is happening and have happened to other people like Trayvon Martin. And now I'm sitting judgment of somebody who is evidently has killed a young African American or African descent youth. Then I should just pass judgment without looking at the facts and judging in accordance to the law, from my perspective. I know others will disagree with me, but that's mine. However, I do know that based upon George's own admission that he is guilty of killing Trayvon Martin. Based upon his own admission, he is guilty. There's no denial about that. His lawyers, his defense team, no one denied that he killed. He admitted to doing that. He could not even, the lawyers or anyone was not even trying to be technical to say, well, it is not George who killed Trayvon Martin. It was the gun that killed Trayvon Martin, or the bullet that entered him killed Trayvon Martin. Well, this is just me being a thinker. No, he admitted. He admitted to the fact that he's responsible for Trayvon Martin's death, and I think that he is guilty of killing young Trayvon Martin unnecessarily. And as a result of his guilt of killing Trayvon Martin unnecessarily, I think that he should be charged and found guilty for doing that, for doing so, and held responsible for it, for killing young Trayvon Martin, and also suffer the consequences of what I consider to be his irresponsible actions. You can't tell me that a man, I used to do martial arts, I'm a big man now, but back in the day, and to see a little 17-year-old guy, 120 pounds, and I don't know how much this guy weighed, but you tell me, I found out this guy was a mixed martial artist, and you tell me you don't have the skill to disarm or to, wrestle this guy or to subdue him without having to use your weapon. No, I don't buy that. I could see you break the guy's hand, and if at all you know martial arts, that's not difficult for you to do with this young guy. I could see you break his neck, and you could claim, well, you die by you trying to wrestle him breaking his neck, which you didn't have to do either. I could see you knock him out, but to tell me that you have to draw your gun and shoot him in his heart, no. brother, or no, my friend, you're not supposed. This is where I would have to find you guilty for doing that. You could have used some other alternative to restrain this, and knowing again that help was on the way. There's no excuse. But then again, let me get back to my prepared presentation. Yes, so he should be found guilty and suffer the consequences for you, Mr. Zimmerman, should be suffer the consequences other than what you are suffering now, and will be suffering for the rest of your life because the blood is on your shoulder and blood is upon you. You'll be hearing that young man whispering and talking in your ears day in, night out. No alcohol, no drugs, no money, no family, no brother trying to defend you will ever be able to ease that little Trayvon voice that's coming in your head for that evil that somehow you end up performing. So let me get back here. And that is why I think that he should have been charged with the third option, which is manslaughter. Which if he was charged and convicted with, he, George Zimmerman, could have gotten up to 30 years in a U.S. prison. Which, by the way, 30 years in prison is 5 years longer from my understanding of what is called a life sentence in Canada. So I personally think that the prosecutors were maybe overzealous, too overzealous. And who knows, maybe, because I don't know, I'm saying maybe, I'm just using my own thinking now. It's a possibility. So I'm just choose one of those possibilities. It is possible that they were overzealous, and maybe, or it is possible that they deliberately wanted to lose the case to possibly, I don't know, possibly to help defend the son of one of their colleagues. I understand the guy's father is a prominent or was a judge, I don't know. He works in the system. So he must have had connection and some sympathy must run somewhere there. So possibly it's the prosecutors who may have deliberately done this. May have deliberately done this. And and possibly they were under pressure, politically and otherwise, to charge George. And as a result, they have erred, if not deliberately erred, in overcharging him. And knowing that they stood no chance of winning against George Zimmerman, against his very able, very outstanding defense team. So I do think that a lot of the blame, if not all the blame, for George Zimmerman's freedom today should be directed at the prosecutors and not necessarily the defense team, who was only doing their job for which they were hired to do. The jury. The next thing that I want to talk about is the jury. Much has been said about them, and much blame, criticisms, and hatred, rightly or wrongly, have been leveled against them. They have been called almost every name. Names that are both inside the book and names that are even outside of the human vocabulary. Names, of course, that include words or the word racist. But I honestly think that most, if not all of their critics do not know the meaning of the words jury and the word peer. And also they do not know the meaning of the phrase jury of one's peer or jury of one's peers. And if they do know the meaning or the meanings of these words and phrases, then from my perspective, they are either unfair or they are just being plain hypocritical. Now, let's look at the word, the meaning of the word, according again to the dictionary. That's where I go for my knowledge of what words represent. When I hear a word is being spoken, or when I want to understand things, again to the dictionary, because that's where the meaning of the words are. According to dictionary.com, the word jury means, and I quote, a group of persons sworn to render a verdict or true answer on a question or questions officially submitted to them. 2. A group selected according to law and sworn to inquire into or to determine the facts concerning a cause or an accusation submitted to them, and to render a verdict in a court. Compare. Unquote. The word peer, according to the same dictionary, dictionary.com, means, and I quote, a person of the same legal status, a jury, or one's peer, or one's peers. 2. A person who is equal to another in abilities, qualifications, age, background, and social status. Unquote. Now, from my observation, and what I think most people need to understand, is that Trayvon Martin was not on trial. The case or the trial was primarily about the accused, George Zimmerman. It was about finding out if George's companions, his peers, would send him to prison, or if they would set him free to become their voluntary neighborhood watchman, or their police informer, or their protector, and possible to become again their Spider-Man savior. Once again, unknown to many, Trayvon's trial, from my perspective, began and ended in minutes, if not seconds, the night he crossed paths with George Zimmerman. He was suspected, was accused, chased, accosted, tackled, arrested, charged, and sentenced to death by Zimmerman that same night. However, to the system and to the court, Trayvon Martin was very unfortunate, for he did not make it to court. He did not make it before the judge, to stand before the judge, to maybe receive justice. But George Zimmerman did. And while George Zimmerman, was being fortunate to be judged by 6 members of his peers, meaning his future was being determined by 6 people that are either of his same legal status, 6 people who were either equal to him in abilities, equal to him in qualifications, in age, in background, in social status, etc. They had to be equal in order for him to be their peers, according to what the meaning of the word and according to the law, I understand. So while he was being judged favorably by his peers, because I would rather my peers judge me than anyone else, if I was in a situation like that, right? So while he was being judged favorably by his peers, Trayvon's body, or Trayvon's dead body, was being carried away by 6 members of his Trayvon's peers. Now, from my perspective, or from my observation and perspective, the system or its courts are not at all about the dead. They're not about the dead. In other words, from my perspective, the system and its courts are not interested in the dead. But the system and its courts are about the living. They are interested in the living. I have never seen a literal dead or lifeless body in a court, nor have I ever heard of one being taken to court to defend itself. From my perspective, the court, and possible to all other institutions, there is more value in the living bodies than the dead. The living bodies, the living vessels, can do business with and for the system and its courts. But the dead can't. The living bodies can make money for the system and its courts, but the dead can't. Or at the very least, the living bodies can do repeat business for the system's court, or the system's courts. It really caught my attention when at the end of the trial and George Zimmerman was told that he was free, the last thing I heard the judge said to him, and I quote, "You have no further business with the court." If I didn't hear exactly all the words, it's something to that effect. You have no further business with the court. Business, to me, to I, the Mystic Philosopher, means to be engaged in commerce, or business to the system, to be engaged in commerce or some form of money transaction, wealth distribution, or the like, currency flow. She released the vessel, she released the life body from detention so that it is free to sail the seas and to do more business for the system and its courts. Now, let me talk a little bit about disparity. Let us look at what I think from my perspective is disparity in the court. The living George Zimmerman, though through his able defense team, was able to choose 6 people of his George Zimmerman's equal, 6 people of his George Zimmerman's background and social status to consider and determine his George Zimmerman's future by finding him guilty or not guilty. He was able to choose 6 people who could and who can personally see themselves in him, relate to him, who could relate to him at every level and in every way. 6 people who could or who can picture themselves in being in his position and possibly doing the same things that he did under the same set of circumstances. 6 people who could sympathize with him. 6 people who could empathize